All right, good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure, and thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to be presenting yet again for Write the Docs meetup. So I'm Pooja. I've been in the documentation space for the past 7 years, majority of which I spent at Oracle, working with enterprise applications. And currently, I am researching the strategies in content and experience as a student of MBA in Design Strategy at California College of the Arts. So today, I am going to try to condense everything that I've done in 2017 on a project that I worked on for a good 9 months into 5-minute talk. So it's a customary practice for me to actually do a mind map before I get on the stage. And at the Write the Docs meetup in East Bay, when I actually ended my presentation with this image, and then later I had a lot of people coming to me saying that, can you please reshare this image? So I decided that I'm going to start my presentation this time with this image. And this is a whole lot of things of what I think about how we treat our content, and especially when it comes to the various factors that we look into when we are looking at content. And in the East Bay talk, I touched upon metrics and collaborations and what are those emergency situations as writers that we come across, and what are the emotions we go through, like being rushed and feeling helpless, and what are the strategies we can do in order to build a regimen. So we looked at how can we examine regimen building as tech writers there. And today, I'm going to take it one step forward and take you to another part of this same diagram. But before that, I have a quick activity for you. I give you 1 minute for this, or rather, consider 30 seconds. What is the one thing that you think is essential, or one thing that you act or feel when you are approaching the deadline? Let me rephrase this. What is the one thing you do prior to every doc release? What is the one act you take? What is that one feeling you feel? I just need one word. And after 20 more seconds, I will hear your response. Ready? Ready? Okay, who wants to share? Double check.
Double check and then relief.
Relief. Mm-hmm.
Close your eyes and push the button.
Okay. Okay. Anything else?
Rushing.
Rushing. That's a feeling, right? So, so rushed, feeling helpless at that moment. What is our bandwidth to do anything more in that moment? And what is the moment of truth that we come across after the whole game is over, right? So in September 2017, I was working on this project where we were finishing up with the 8th build of our code release. So we were actually doing the entire set of documentation. We have finished editing our XML files on ArboText Epic tool, which we were using. And everything was ready. The code was in. Changes were done. The files were good to be patched. And this was the go live date then. And just on the 13th of September, we receive an email saying that patched files are throwing severity 1 error. And that obviously got us all like, whoa, what's happening? And of course, the firefighting mode was activated. The next step that we did was we analyzed what exactly was responsible for that sev1 error. And it was all these objects that you see. And it begins at 1 and ends at we had to touch 1,500 objects in 4 days. Let me recorrect. I had to touch 1,500 objects in 4 days. And not just touch, but search for all those objects, check out all those objects from the tool, make the edit, check in back those objects, and then repatch all those files. And as you can see, it happened on a Thursday, and the go live date was Sunday. And we never imagined that this one such situation is going to come. But the next beautiful thing that you would be surprised to hear is the change had nothing to do with the written word. The change was actually, so this is one of the files that I opened, and as you can see, can I point this? I can't. It was just changing the file name. So here in the file name, after I check out the object, I can modify this particular attribute. When I modify, I can change the string of text that's here. I had to go in there, and all I had to do was enter a space and delete that space, and again, close the file. Does that make any sense to anyone here? The reason for that is that we had to show that the file was new to the server. And the only way it could do that was to have a new timestamp attached with that file. And this was a detect that no writer on the entire team of 50 could ever detect, because it had to come from the server team. And the server team was nowhere in our geography. I was working in India then. So we had no idea what is the server team working on until they came up with a report of all the details that were patched in the previous X builds. And that didn't happen until we were at the 9th X build, which is like the final X build. So what did we do then? We had to revisit our strategy of how we are writing our code. How are we having our process of sending out these files to the server team? And this is my spreadsheet that I kept updating for every phase of completion that we did in the documentation. So what we are looking at is a chart where we have tasks, we have the handoff team names, the handoff timeline, the deliverables, the FAS and the CDD is what we call at Oracle as the feature analysis specification document and the content design document. And it occurred to me, like, are we really designing? Or as tech writers, are we really designing this process? And if we are, what sense is it making if it's not working in the favor of what we are doing? If you're going to be in the grind of working for good 19 hours for straight 4 days just because you're going live, there is absolutely no utility of such a document. And that's why I chose to call that do not design but program. And when I say program, I mean that you structure things, but you also structure things respecting time. And as you can see in this particular spreadsheet, how many of us here are content strategists or who have done auditing? Okay, okay. So do you guys use spreadsheets? Spreadsheets are the biggest boon for us in organizing our lives. At least that's the conclusion I came up with. And this has the complete snapshot of what I've done in that entire release. So going in from the FAS to the CDD, to the people, to the timeline, to the update status. So this is more like a Gantt chart right now. The gray cells that you see are the cells that have indicated completion of the task. And it began with the yellow star. I'm not sure what the yellow is. Okay, that's UI. We didn't touch the UI, so that's why it's at yellow. But apart from that, error messages. So in one particular release, it's not just the user guide or the implementation guide or the release notes that we are doing, but we are also working on the error messages that appear in the form or on the web application of that particular feature change. So what are the changes that have happened? What are the bug numbers? What are the identifiers? All of that is also going in the same documentation. So how much time do I have? Where's my timer? Okay. Okay, so I was breezing through my slide, but what I'm trying to emphasize here is the idea of how are we looking at our documentation? What is our strategy in finishing off each phase of our documentation? How many of us actually have, I actually touched slightly on this in the previous talk about review processes. Do we review our peers' work? How many of us here do that? Nice, not bad, I would think. But, okay, one more further question. How many of them are actually new writers' work that you review? Or is it like, it's a unanimous decision to review everyone's work all the time? Pretty much. But what I've noticed, and as I'm speaking to more people as tech writers and content strategists, people who have a good amount of experience, let's say 10 or more, do not consider the need to have their work reviewed or even have a peer's work reviewed, because to a certain extent, they feel it's a waste of time. But you never know. There could be just minor oversight until you finally have a bug being raised by a customer who says that there is some flaw in your documentation and we've spotted it, and then it goes all the way through your enhancement request list. So this is the biggest advantage that I see of just having one simple documentation that can ease your life. But as writers, we are not really working on one product, are we? Is there any such privileged writer who's working only on one product? Oh my God, wow, wow. I was working on...
There won't be enough time for other people.
Okay, so... Okay, so what I would think is that the best way for us to manage our product life cycle along with our own life cycle is to have some sort of schedule which is shared with your teams, and that schedule has to be followed up with each and every member of that particular team, right from dev to QA to the support, in order for you to not come across one such similar tragedy that our team had, right? So that's it from me. Thank you.
Hi, so I've worked for large companies, very small companies, and I want to go over a really high level, basically everything I know about release notes and what I think works. What do you write about in release notes? New features, pretty obvious. Fixed bugs, obvious. Known issues is where you get into a little bit of trouble, and that's where things get tricky. So new features, quick summary of the awesome stuff in the release. In order of importance, most important first, because people are going to come in there, skim, look for what they want, and trust me, you want to be working with your product managers to give you that business case of why is this stuff really cool, and they're going to want the highest value stuff at the top. Stick to a summary. Link off to more extensive documentation. Don't put everything in the release notes. Of course, that means you have to have that other supporting documentation. Use descriptive headings, because again, people want to skim and see why is this really cool. Don't just say, oh, we've, new feature. No, really spell it out, what it is. But again, summary, descriptive, concise. Fixed bugs. I stick to user-reported bugs. Again, things that our customers have reported. Can be internal or external users, especially if you're dealing with people support, front-end sales, people who report bugs, and they're really, really concerned. And they want to know, did you fix these bugs that I reported? Again, short, meaningful descriptions. If you have a help portal, if you can link to that so customers can see, oh yeah, my bug's been fixed. Yay, awesome. If you have an internal system like Jira, having a case number is useful. Really good for internal users, so someone in support or sales can check that. It's a little bit of visual clutter, but I haven't found that it really confuses your external users. They see a little number, they don't care, but they can see a description. That's what's important. This is where it gets tricky, known issues. I say document the problems your users are likely to encounter. Work with your engineering, customer-facing teams to figure out what those are. You'll get a lot of information from customer support success. What are these bugs? Also, provide workarounds. Don't just say, there's a bug, oops, sorry, they're going to be stuck. You get a lot of information from customer support success, professional services, technical sales, those front-end teams. Also, they're the ones who are really going to consume this information. They want to know what these bugs are, and they're going to be demanding to know what these bugs are. Again, politics. Release notes can be tricky and much more politically charged than a lot of the other docs that we're used to. Things like, how do you frame new features? Is it more marketing, more technical? You got to find that balance there, and that's why I suggest working with your working with marketing on tone and voice, working with product management on what is the business case, what's the value of these things. How much information is too much? What I often get is pushback saying, but if we show them the known issues, our competitors will use that against us. Fair enough, but how do you want users to learn about your bugs? Do you want them just to stumble across them in the product and then be mad at you? Or do you want to give them some heads up, or give your support team a heads up so that when they know about these issues, they can prepare for them, they know what the workarounds are, they know that you're paying attention and that you will make friends with your support team. This is very important. Internal, external release notes. If possible, do both. The system I'm using now has permission controls, so I can have conditional content. If you are logged in and have an employee access, you can see certain internal-only things. The problem is that employees who aren't logged in won't see that, so you do have to remind them that you need to log in. Don't have multiple copies of release notes. I did this for a while. Just don't do it. Don't do it. Even if you only have 2 copies, an internal and external, release notes change so frequently, and often by so many different people are touching them. It is impossible to keep them straight. It's a nightmare of maintenance. Just don't do it. Practice of release notes. If you can automate it from a task system, that's great. And release notes will be up to date as long as you run the scripts. Single source of truth. It does mean there's technical tooling required, and you do need to train people to use those, to write usable descriptions. So there's a technical overhead, technical cost there. Using fields in a task system like Jira. Again, you can generate a single report, that's great. You can specify if it's release notes or other guides. But again, you need to train people to use those fields and fill them out. And you need to generate reports. If you're going to do it completely manually, you'll talk to a lot of people. And it's a lot of work, and you'll make friends, but it's a pain in the butt. Something that we're doing now is, this is in Jira, we have a status field, which is release notes requested, release notes done, known issue requested done, full docs done. You know, they could fill out what version. When I have actually marked it done, I will put in a URL so that people can say, oh yes, this is actually cleared. This will be attached to a ticket, with an engineering ticket with some work, and they'll flag this. So I can run reports that look like this and say, oh look, we've got documentation requested for these. We've got release notes requested for these. This is really helpful. Again, not fully automated, but it lets me do reports. It lets me really track this. It is also visible to everyone else who's tracking these systems. This is one field in a whole bunch of other ones, so we can all track. We can all make sure these things are getting done. Whew. Thank you.
My name's Matthew. I do UX design. I run a small design studio in Milpitas doing UX design for SaaS and consumer products. My speech is not going to be about documentation, so sorry to disappoint you. But it's about one of the case studies that we worked on, and a lot of people have found it interesting when we posted it online. We've had CEOs or product managers email us like, this was great, this helped us. So I'll just get into it. So what we worked on was appointment forms for a SaaS company that their product was to enable small businesses such as salons, dentists, et cetera, to get appointments online easily and manage their appointments. So we worked on the front side of the consumer side where you would actually book your appointments. So these are 2 examples of what calendars or booking forms look like today, most commonly. Not all of them look like this. So some of them are by month. You'll go day by day looking for an available time, or some are by week. So what's wrong with this? Well, let me first ask you a simple question. And let me set a scenario. If I was a dentist right now and you guys were at the dentist office and you just finished your appointment, you're ready to book your next appointment, and I say, what's your general availability in September of this year? What would some of you guys say? No idea. Or some people, as we did user testing, some people, like if you have to book it there, they'd say somewhere in the morning, because most people work 8 to 5 or 9 to 5, or somewhere in the evening, or maybe lunchtime, or somewhere around there. So the problem with this, let's go back to this, is it goes by month, then day, then time. Whereas most people know approximately their time, unless they're very dedicated and know exactly their schedule for the rest of their life. So The problem again here is you know that, let's say, 9 a.m. you need to go, and it's blocked out there. You go to the next day, blocked, blocked. You're just going day by day, and it takes forever. The weekly one, same thing. Like, this one's actually worse than that one because now you're going week by week, just scrolling through the weeks, and it won't have any issue. So how can we fix this? Well, the easiest way to fix it is first ask, what time are you available on the form? So assume this is a form. I don't have the actual form design, but this is similar to what it looks. Now each business puts their time blocks that are most popular. So 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., 12 p.m. to 4 p.m., or 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. This is for, let's say, one of the dentists or another like salon or something. You can select one or multiple of these time blocks. So let's say I'm available at 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. From here, you'll get a very familiar interface that you're already used to, is a weekly view. However, it only shows times within that time block you've selected, and it will skip days that do not have any of those times. So you will have a weekly view. You can click next and next. The nice thing about this is, let's say you chose that time block, and this is a very popular place that people go to, and their next appointment is a year from now. The very first day that shows is going to be that day a year later. So from here, we did a lot of user testing, and this actually helped businesses convert by about 15% more than what they were doing before. Obviously, this doesn't work for every case, but this worked for a lot of the businesses they were working with. And like I said, we've gotten a lot of feedback on these ones as well. Just posting it online, we were able to post it on Medium about 2 years after we actually did it. And we've gotten a lot of feedback from other people saying this is great, they want an implementation, or at least like a GitHub code that they can use for it. Unfortunately, we have not done that, but we'll probably get around to doing something like that. So basically, what I'm trying to get at is, even though it's been done the same way as it's always done for the past 20 years, 30 years, however long the internet's been around, it doesn't mean it's the correct way. In fact, a lot of things may have been done because of technology limitations, whereas if you actually look at how people interact in real life and then apply that again to how we use it on the web, it may be able to be updated with technology we have today to improve the user experience. Thank you.
Well, thank you for inviting me to speak. This is great to be back at the Google campus and talk. So I'm a developer advocate at IBM. So I used to write code for 2 decades. I started as a teenager. And the fun part is I've learned, self-taught myself how to code, and I read documentation, I copy and paste all the code that hopefully you'll all write accurately and very easy for me to understand. And then about a decade ago, I came to my first hackathon here on the Google campus, and I found my passion over 100 hackathons in 6 years, that just building cool things, standing up and sharing what I've built. And so hopefully you can see the passion I have for building things, and great documentation helps developers like me get up and running really quickly. And so I wanted to share 2 projects I've done in the last about 3 years. And these are self-defined projects that I've done being inspired by certain technologies. And so as we document these projects and what we do, we use different platforms. And so it's not just in text that we write documentation, but we put it in a YouTube video to demonstrate how you use a product or why you would get so excited about it. You have Medium, where you're writing about how things have been built, or the design decisions that you make when you're using these products that we're so devoted to 9 to 5 or even after hours. Then you have like Twitch, where you're live streaming actually live coding, or maybe do you live document on Twitch? Is that a career path? That would actually be an interesting one. GitHub, where we have all these readme.md files, and you want to enable the developers to build whatever you document, and many other platforms. So this is one of my equations I kind of live by, and maybe it's more quantity over quality, but I find that if I push myself to keep producing content, eventually I'll get something that gets people excited, and that quality will then come out in different ways. But I'm not really good at math, and fractions wasn't my strong suit in school, so that equation might be wrong. So about 3 years ago, before joining IBM, I created a challenge for me, and over 30 days, I created 15 projects. And I wanted to learn AngularJS and build different types of interfaces and just get up to speed on AngularJS. And using my hackathon experience of turning things around in 24 or 48 hours, this was no challenge, well, for the most part, to be able to go through this process repetitively. After about the 5th project, I was kind of starting to think I was going insane, and maybe this wasn't actually the best idea to devote a whole month to this. But it's a great portfolio if you ever want to showcase what you do. Just go overboard with quantity. And these APIs that I used during the project were APIs that I learned about during my hackathon experience. And from there, I was able to revisit those and actually build new concepts. So what are the components of a project? Well, I share my thought process. And so why am I building out this process? Restrictions from the platform or other things that I discover. The setup. So how does a developer can kind of repeat the process and have as many developers as possible repeat the process? The code, so make it very nicely tabbed or spaced, whichever one you want, nicely commented, and then show them the pretty UIs. And I look back at this project and I go, wow, I really did a great job at UI, and I sucked at that point on doing UI. But using frameworks, that's great. So then last summer, I was kind of getting into this TJ-Bot craze that we have at work, and it's a 3D printed robot with a Raspberry Pi, and it's basically enabling developers to use hardware and our IBM technologies, which this is a whole open source project, so we're not selling this robot or whatnot. But I got so excited about the Node.js side that I am so devoted to the Node-RED open source project we have as well, that I decided, what's another month of vlogging and showcasing all the things you can do with the TJ-Bot. So you can see all the different things I did, but this time, instead of one project every 2 days, it was one project every day. And remember, now I have a day job where I actually have to go document things and blog about things. So this was a side project. Every night I went home and I started writing a blog post and showing how you build something. But this time around, I did a YouTube video every day, and I'm not really good at the video editing part, so these are kind of rough, just like my first blog post in the project. But this is Node-RED. It's a visual editor. You drag and drop nodes over into the palette. And so this one's a game that because after, 2 weeks, I was getting tired of just teaching it how to wave and whatnot. So I built out a game that you could say a word, and it will spell out the words letter by letter. And so I'm thinking, oh, okay, so a child could say any word, and TJ-Bot will spell out the letters. And so these would take me hours on hours, and I had to write a blog post, I had to do a YouTube video, and I had to post this update. Yes, I am insane. If you want to ever talk to me about my passion, let me know. And so I did close to 30 of these skills, and just showing the passion that if you have something that you're really excited about, go for it. Don't ask anyone for permission. And most importantly, document the experience and let others know that you did it and they can do it too. And that's kind of the motto I live by, that I can do it, so you can do it, and I want to demonstrate it. So if you ever do a project, document it with YouTube or blog posts and whatnot. And if anyone wants to see the final, I don't know how to actually skip to the, okay, well, you'll have to go to that YouTube video and see, but it spells out words, and it's pretty cool. And so, not every great idea, or not every idea may be great, but if you never try to share it and inspire others, you never know. So put it out there, and maybe someday like you get recognized for your hard work. So that's my Twitter account. I'm 86 followers from 1,000, so I'm starting to beg people to follow me. And also Medium, I blog a lot of my projects, and that's my passion. So hopefully that has inspired you to take documentation to another level. Thank you.
All right, I'm Ed Bacher. I am a tech writer here at Google. I do internal docs for our search platforms. So it's a little bit Wild West, because we're writing for Google developers, and they're writing platforms for other Google developers. And you may have, if you've been to write the docs, you may have seen we have a docs as code system here called G3Doc. Rhiannon McNamara gave a talk I think 2 or 3 years ago on it, and it's basically our own internal web server, and we serve Markdown directly from our source control system. So one of the reasons we do that is it's nicer than Google Sites, it's nicer than the wiki we were using, and also it's the same workflow that engineers have, and most of our docs are written by engineers. Most of the detailed docs, I mean, we're outnumbered. We have several thousand engineers, and we have about 5 or 10 tech writers in search. So, of course, since we're Google, a lot of engineers love to write things in Google Docs, and sometimes they just keep things in Google Docs. And Google Docs is terrible for, well, I think it's terrible for an end publication system. The search is pretty awful. There's no hierarchical organization. But it is really nice for collaboration, commenting, all that kind of stuff. So we end up with a lot of people starting out in Google Docs, and then we want to eventually get to the web. And some people just don't like writing in Markdown. So when we started with G3Doc, we had a lot of Google Docs, and we were trying to convert those. And there was a tool, still is, AppScript tool for Google Docs that another Googler wrote. And it was fine, except it was very manual. There was a lot of things to clean up. So I took the base of that and wrote another Google has just come out with add-ons that you could embed in all your Google Docs. And so I wrote an add-on internally that would convert from our Google Docs into Markdown or HTML. And then we could store it in G3Doc and publish it in G3Doc and serve it directly from in this case, our storage is our source control system. But you can do it on GitHub too, or anything else. And the advantage is once it's published here, you've got your docs actually are code. We use all of our code tool chain for editing, version control, reviews, We do code reviews just like you do code reviews on your code. Our docs are code reviewed as well. And what else? Bugs. Anything else I'm forgetting? And I always wanted to make an external version of this converter, but there was just too many bugs. But I finally got to the point where it was pretty good. So if you look for, I'll post the slides, this GD to MD-HTML. It's a very literal name, but that's what it does. Google Docs to Markdown or HTML. And it's an external version, pretty much the same as what we have internally, except for some of our Googleisms are not, don't get converted the same way. And just in case this demo doesn't work, I just want to show you a screenshot of what it does. This is a Google Doc. I've used the add-on. If you go to the add-on menu, it just has GD to MD-HTML, MD-HTML. In this case, I've just selected a little bit of it and press the Markdown button, and it converts with a little boilerplate, but just converts it into Markdown. And then we just cut and paste that, stick it into our code repository, and we're good to go. And this is that bit converted and pasted into GitHub, and this is it with no manual editing, just converted into a Markdown and displayed on GitHub. So let me, might have a minute?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So let me, why is this not? Okay, so this is that, I think that's the same doc I was using. So we just bring up the add-on, say convert. In this case, I'll just convert the whole doc. If you don't select anything, it just converts the entire doc. I'll just select all that, copy it, and let me go to my GitHub wiki. Okay, so this is that page that I screenshotted before. I'll just edit that. I'll just save it. Hopefully everything converts. So there's our doc converted into Markdown. And we do, I'm not going to go through all the features, but one of the things that a lot of people like, some people don't, is syntax highlighting. So we can do it, clearly we can do it from Markdown, but you can add the language specification into the Google Doc itself. And then when it gets converted, we just ignore, well, we don't ignore it, but we have it in code. The converter ignores it, but puts it into the code block specification, so we can have syntax highlighting if you want it. One other thing, we do tables, and one of the requests I often get from Google and from outside Google is to do Markdown tables. But we're doing, these are fairly complex tables. We've got, columns that are merged with other columns and rows that are merged with other rows. And there's no easy way to do that, to detect that in a Google Doc and to parse it into Markdown. So I'm not a purist with Markdown. If you can't do it easily in Markdown, I'm happy to throw HTML in. Some people just want everything to be Markdown, and I don't care. So if anybody knows of a good way to do that, to get complex tables in Markdown, I'd be happy to. I'm eventually going to open source this, and if you have good ideas about parsing other stuff from Google Docs into Markdown, I'd be more than happy to accept that. So thank you.